Hello, folks. I'm going to clean my glasses so I can see Don Reid. This is going to be a very special Facebook Live with Les. We'll be spending time with Don Reid of the Statler Brothers. Yes, those Statler Brothers. And I've been looking forward to it. Being a lifelong Statler Brother fan, have every piece of vinyl that they ever put out, every CD, every recorded song that has been released. And I have recently been reading this book right here. Here we go. We're going to admit, here he is. Hello, Don Reid.
Go.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Les?
I can.
Good.
Good to see you, Don. All is well here.
All right.
Is Langdon back there?
Langdon's here, yes. And
I'm right here. I'm off to the side. How you doing?
And my
Les?
son D is here. Both of them are here. They to set up anything, I got to have them both here.
Good.
Les,
Believe me, I understand. And I can't
thank
believe
you.
that you and I are actually successfully doing this, because I had to be the one to set it up on my end, which was pretty.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right.
Well, listen, before we officially start, and I'm sure you've been updated, we've got this Zoom thing that we're doing for a Facebook show that I host that will air later. And then audio that we're going to do for my syndicated radio shows. And then I want to send questions later today for a magazine article that I'm going to do on you. And I'm hoping for a cover. So, we've got multiple things to knock out this morning. So I guess maybe my first question is how long do I have you for, so I can kind of structure this?
For both interviews, you mean?
Yes.
For this? What do you need? Would you need an hour or two, hour and a half?
I've got two pages of questions, probably about 40 questions all in all, and some of them may require short answers. Some may be longer answers. So I think an hour will probably do it. If we go north of an hour, is that going to be okay?
Yeah, that'll be okay. That'll be okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And
you're good. Sure.
And the majority of where I'm going to head, because this is what I've done for 42 years, is to tilt the scale to the gospel side of what you all did. Now, we will no doubt touch on everything, but it'll be heavily skewed toward the gospel stuff.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
And when you get this, make sure we get a copy, and we'll post.
Yes, sir.
Send the line to make sure we'll post it on our thing.
Rest assured, you will get it.
All right. All right.
Well, let's go ahead and get started then, kind of officially here. Okay, so I have been reading. Well, before that, let me kind of tee it up so you know a little bit about who you're dealing with on my end.
Okay.
A lifelong Statler Brother fan, own every piece of vinyl, every CD. Can sing all four parts of every single song that you all have recorded and released. I'm not saying
you're valuable to have.
I'm not saying that I do it well, mind you. I'm just saying
I'm sure you do.
I know all four of the parts.
Good. All right.
And I'm there's the first one. I got the first one.
Oh.
But this I'm such a crazy fan. I don't know how many of your fans used to do this, but when a piece of vinyl would come out, like this one, Entertainers On and Off the Record.
Right.
Whenever there were magazine articles out in the publications, I would take them out of the publications and put them in the sleeves of the albums to coordinate the year of the album and the pieces.
Boy, you are thorough. I will say that.
I'm probably as close to a stalker as you can get without stalking you.
I think I'll call you a historian instead of
that's better than stalker. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so all right. So I've been reading this book, and I finally finished it last night, and Wow. I mean, just honestly, I'm not sure I have the words for it. It's just wow.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Certainly put a lot of heart and time into it. And I put 40 years of memories into it, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah. Well, and I understand too from reading the very first couple pages that Harold got to proof the book even.
He did. He read every word I wrote and approved everything. And I was so glad that it happened that way, that he was able to do that.
And quickly, we have been praying for you and the family, and Harold will be missed. Maybe the greatest entertainer I've ever seen.
Thank you, Ben. I feel the same way, and I appreciate those words. Thank you.
Well, let's go back to, okay, so you first started singing in I think about 58 or 59 or so. Then you get added to the Johnny Cash show from what, 60 what to what?
64. 64 through 72. We were there 8.5 years.
Okay. Then after that, you take off on your own till you retire in 2002. So in those 3 specific slices of time in your career, what things did you learn in each slice, the before Cash, the during Cash, and the post-Cash years, that even gospel artists today could take and glean from you in those 3 different parts of your career?
That's an interesting question. And what we learned, and we'll say pre-Cash, before we got to Cash, everything we learned before that, we learned from the gospel world. We learned from the Blackwood Brothers and the Statesmen, and watching these guys on stage and buying every album, just like you were talking there a while ago, the vinyl, buying every album they had, and we would just study every song, and we would sing them. And a lot of times when as kids, we would sing their arrangements, even though sometimes there were more arrangement than we could handle, but we sang them anyway because we thought that's how it was supposed to be. So we learned everything. We learned about staging. We learned about how to get on and off the stage. We learned about how to put a program together with songs and how to mix in tempos and feelings that you want to go from one to another in an hour's time or 30 minutes, whatever you're doing. Learned all of that from the gospel field, because James Blackwood, Hovey Lister, these guys were, they were idols to us. And we learned everything there was to know. By the time we got to Cash, we were already considered ourselves pretty decent entertainers.
Yeah. Okay, now how about during the Cash years? What did you learn?
Cash years, we learned so much. Now we're on a bigger stage, and we got big audiences every night. And we learned from John about how to be out there, how to put yourself out there. And we learned a lot of good and bad from John. John had his demons, of course, we all know that. And we learned things to do and things not to do. And he was a great teacher without ever being teaching. He would just watching, just being there on a daily basis, and being his friend and being with him for 8.5 years. And we learned so much about the business. He got us our first record deal. So we learned about recording from him. We learned about publishing from him. We were writers in his publishing company. We just got our education pretty much from what he did and how he did it, and some things that he didn't do and things that we learned that way.
Well, then eventually you got to the point to where you had to cut the purse strings and the skirt strings and all the strings, and you went out on your own. And so then what did you learn moving forward?
Well, you learned even more responsibility. You learned out there that now everything that happened was your responsibility. It was on you. It was on your shoulders. And we headlined our own shows then. But again, we still used the principles and the ways that we learned from Cash. And even taking this farther on, Marshall Grant, who was the bass player for Tennessee 3, and he did so much of the behind the curtain stuff for John, as far as production, as far as handling bookings and handling everything about the show. In time, Marshall went to work for us and became our agent the last 20 years of our career.
Yeah.
So we had the man that we were learning so much from with the Cash years with us then as we ended our career.
Boy, that had to be handy.
Boy, it was. We talked for years, but one of these days we're going to have our own Marshall. That's what we referred to him and then we actually had the original Marshall, and we were just loving it because we were great friends and we liked the way he handled things.
When you were going back to before the Cashiers, you were just rehearsing at the house and going and singing at some churches, maybe in civic events, that kind of thing. What kind of conversations were the four of you having about your future at that very, very early stage?
We talked about our dreams, how it would be nice if we could do this, but it exceeded all the dreams that we had then. We weren't dreaming as big as it really happened, and that took you, it takes you by surprise. Every success does take you by surprise because there's always a bigger chance of you failing than succeeding. Yeah. But we talked about what we want to do, and this would be fun. And one of these days we can do this, and one of these days this might happen. And then when it did, we were looking at each other and pinching ourselves and saying, "Is this really happening?" And we were blessed from day one, just that simple.
And boy, especially after reading your book, I mean, I knew most of the stuff prior to reading it, but after reading it, I can say that you probably walked away saying, "Boy, did we accomplish that and then some."
Yeah, but we weren't always aware of it while it was happening, strangely enough, Les. You could look back in a certain periods in your career, you look back and say, wow, that happened and that was nice. And then since retirement, I have looked back at our music. I've looked back at our singing. When I wrote this book, I listened to every album and every song as I wrote about it. And to tell you the truth, it was better than I remembered it being. And I say that because of the other Statlers, because they were really, Phil and Jimmy and Harold and Lew, just terrific partners and terrific singers and entertainers. And I look back on it, I said, man, that's better than I thought it was when we actually did it.
You know what I'm going to do now that I've finished the book? I am going to take from the first album and doing it in the order that you put it in the book, the way you recorded it. I'm going to take the book with me on the road, and I'm going to read each song and play each song after I've read what you have written about each song.
Wow. I'd like to be there for.
And the reason I'm doing that is you brought out such detail on many of the songs, right down to the players. And of course, I'm here in Nashville and I produce in Nashville, and many of the players that you've used, I use today. You mentioned Kevin Grant, for example, bass player that on some of your last recordings. I've used him for years, and other folks. And so now that I want to listen to each song with all of that detail and information as an overlay as I listen to each song. I'm pretty pumped about doing it.
Well, that's great. When writing it, I sometimes worried about getting too much information, too technical. When I started talking about vocal arrangements and how we would stack different parts in different places, that might be more than some people want. But then I figured, well, maybe some people do want that because they want to know how the harmonies happened and why so-and-so sang solo and why a duet here. Yeah. So, and I'm glad that that's of interest to you.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I sing in a group. You may remember Mike Holcomb, bass singer of the Inspirations for 41 years.
Yeah.
Well, he and I have a quartet together. And I'm going to try to find a song that will make sense to where we can do the quartet arrangement where you have the tenor singing the bass line that you talked about that. I'm going to figure that out, Don, and I'm going to do that on a song, and I'm going to send it to you, and you grade me.
Please do. The perfect example of that was Delta Dawn we recorded, and that's what we did on Delta Dawn when you listen to that one. Yeah. It was crazy the way it was mixed up, but it was fun to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to do that. I'll send it to you. Okay, next question. So it sounded like your love for harmony was birthed from the quartets that you listened to as a kid, Blackwood, Statesman, and so forth. Is that a pretty good assessment?
Oh yeah, that was our musical education. As I said many times, we took gospel harmonies and put country lyrics to it, and that made the Statler Brothers. That's who we were, but we were gospel harmony all the way.
If you had to boil it down, I'm going to put you on the spot with this. And if you had to boil it down to just one of those two quartets, which of those two between the Blackwoods and the Statesmen kind of popped up to the top?
Boy, everybody has their favorite. Oh, we've talked about this with Bill Gaither. We've talked about it among ourselves, and everybody's got a different answer. But you can ask me, and bang, my answer would be Blackwood Brothers.
Okay.
I just love the Blackwoods. I love James.
I kind of thought that might be the case because you all wrote a song about the Blackwood Brothers, and I don't think you wrote one about the Statesmen.
No. Well, you're ahead of me on that one. You're right. Yeah, I did write that one about the Blackwoods.
Great song, by the way.
Just James was like my idol when I was growing up. You know, such a singer and such a good man.
Yeah, yeah. Something that you wrote in your book that really jumped out at me because, again, for 42 years, Southern gospel music is what I've done. Everything from DJing at local AM stations, very much similar to WEAK radio, all the way up to.
Oh, we've all been there, yeah.
Yeah, all the way up to running the Solid Gospel Radio Network. I ran the Singing News magazine for years. So, I mean, God has blessed me to be at the highest mountain, and I've been in the lowest valleys. And I've enjoyed the climb, the ascension and descensions every time. But there was something that you said in the book, and I wrote it down, that caught my interest. And I want you to elaborate on this a little bit. You said, you mentioned that you felt that the Southern gospel music genre was dying a little bit. I'd like for you to elaborate on that.
Well, not the gospel field, but sometimes the Southern gospel influence. And I think it went away. We lost some when they started dying off. Some of the greats, the J.D. Sumners and Jake Hesses, and we saw all this happen. But that's time. You can't keep that from happening. And so now there's more groups that are coming in that you maybe just not exactly Southern gospel, and that's wonderful too. You know, I'm not a big fan of praise and worship kind of music. I like the old hymns, and I like the old style of arranging them and the harmonies that go with it. So I'm just kind of in another decade there with that.
Old school, as we say.
Old school, yeah.